that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter.
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Lemmel. Would you take your seat, please? And Mr. Lemmel, on behalf of the City Council, everyone in this room, and the citizens of the City of Thousand Oaks, I'd like to congratulate you on your appointment to this commission. I want to warmly welcome you to this meeting and to all our future meetings, and also to give our thanks for your volunteering to be a part of the governance of this great city of Thousand Oaks. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Reader.
Our pleasure. Now, in order to save some time, I know my fellow commissioners would also like to give you welcome aboards, but I would ask them to wait until the meeting's adjourned so they can give their personal regards to you, and we can continue on. The next item of business is to continue with a election that we started last month but was put off, and that is the election of a new vice chair for this commission. And I open the meeting to nominations. Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, last meeting I nominated Commissioner Simpson for vice chair. Thank you. And you weren't here? So.
All right. Do we have...
Sure, I would happily accept and am honored to serve as vice chair. Thank you.
Good.
You're welcome.
Any other nominations? Ms. Zambrano, can we just have a hand vote?
Yes, all those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Item 6 is public comments. Ms. Zambrano, could you please explain the procedure for speaking? And I would tell everyone here, public comments is not for the later agenda items such as Waverly or what is it, Mirabella, speed humps. This will be for other business.
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during the agenda item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the Commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be acted upon by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. As comments can only be recorded while speaking into the microphone, please refrain from addressing the commissioners unless you are at the podium. If you are unable to come to the podium or should need to step away while speaking, a wireless microphone is available for your convenience. Pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow card will be displayed when you have 1 minute remaining. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting.
Ms. Zambrano, are there any public speaker cards?
We actually have 2 public comment cards. The first one is Randy Wagner.
I'll defer until
Okay, very good. Then the first public speaker would be Nick Kidwai.
Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
I don't have an ID. I can't remember my name. Let me see. I think it's Nick Kidwai, resident of Newberry Park, director concerned citizen of Thousand Oaks since '91. And I would like to say good evening to the commissioners, especially the chair, Mr. Ryder. Thank you for your service and giving us the flashing yellow signals. I think you may have heard, but I will repeat that in my humble opinion, the time has come for this commission to sendai, which is be demolished, removed. As somebody who has been coming to the commissions right from the inception, government just doesn't want to change too often. And in '94, city council meetings went to 2 or 3 a.m. I'm a witness to that. I was foolish enough to stay there. And the planning commission and the traffic commission meetings would also go till 11, 12, and met every month. And nowadays you are basically meeting once a quarter. It costs a lot of money to operate these commissions, especially in staff time. I'm glad that you meet in the boardroom rather than in the share auditorium, where the cost is about $3,000 just for operating the hall. I'm not saying that the traffic issues will go away. I know Mr. Commissioner Gregory has a smile and he doesn't like this comment. I made this before. But the council has too much time on their hand, and they can easily handle the traffic issues, which are not that many anymore. And they are elected officials, so we like elected officials to. One of the reasons that this was given to the Traffic Commission was because humps, generally you end up saying no, and the city council people did not want to be in that position, so they put a barrier in between. On that same level, I would like to say that about 20 years ago, we built up Westlake Boulevard, the promenade and the shopping centers on the other side, and the signals there, so like going north towards North Ranch, there's 5 lanes, 3 lanes to turn left. But it's a maze. You cannot make a U-turn. For the life of me, I don't know why it was done. Maybe big trucks cannot do it, so maybe make a sign that no trucks can make a U-turn. But then you have to make a left turn, and you have to go in. You cannot make a left turn on Teo Boulevard. You have to go into a side street and go into the shopping center if you have to do that. And so I would ask respectfully for the commission to look into that, and then finally. You don't have a digital timer, so I will just quickly talk about something that I talked to Mr. Mashiko 2 years ago, and it's been on my to-do list. I said it to the council, but they're not the traffic commissioners. I live in Running Springs, which is off Ventura Park and Hillcrest, and we appreciate the executive here, Angie Simpson from Amgen, but there's a lot of traffic, and it's difficult in the morning and in the evening to make a left turn, and there's been a lot of accidents. So there's only Running Springs has 115 homes, and in order to make a left turn, the island in the center has solid painted lines. I think I sent my email with the pictures to about 4 commissioners. I don't know if you received them. I did not have time to print them. Mr. Mashiko has pictures also. Is that if the island was there, we could safely navigate there, because to get an opening so that traffic come here and coming over here and going that way, you can have a slot. So you can wait in the middle and then proceed. And I'm not a resident of Kaneho Creek, which is across the street, but I've seen at least 3, if not more, accidents of people going into Kaneho Creek because it's kind of unsafe in that same way, even though they are just making going across one side of traffic. So I would appreciate if the Traffic Commission would ask staff to look into that. Mr. Mashiko, when I met him 2 years ago and told him he was very receptive, but he needs direction. So I would appreciate if some of the commissioners will help. Thank you for the great job you're doing. Nothing personal about the demolition of the commission. You guys are just great, and I know you make big bucks here, so you will really be hurt financially, right? Thank you so much.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Thank you. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to address us. Appreciate it. Oh, Jim, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just we noted a couple comments, concern over at the intersection of Westlake and Thousand Oaks Boulevard, whether or not a U-turn can be permitted, and then the issue with the left turn median issue leaving Running Springs. We'll get back in touch with the citizen follow-up.
Thank you. Next item will be summary notes. I'm sure all the commissioners read them. Are there any comments? Proceeding on to engineers' reports. Tonight, I believe it's Mr. Mashiko that will address item 8A, the speed hump petition for via Mirabella. Did I say that right? Mirabella?
Yes, thank you, Chair Reader. This is a petition request to install speed humps on Via Mirabella between Via Katrina and Via Mariano. We have a monitor off to the side of the room here that shows a presentation that we have. Here's a vicinity map of the neighborhood. The orange line indicates the street Via Mirabella, located south of Orchard Road and north of Via Rio. It's about just over a quarter mile in length with a 25-mile-per-hour posted speed limit. Towards the southern end of the street, we have Sycamore Neighborhood Park and Sycamore Canyon School. This graphic here is a little bit more of a zoomed-in view of the street. There's 37 homes taking frontage along the petition zone. There's 34 homes north of Via Laguna and 3 homes south of Via Laguna. This photograph shows a typical cross-section of Via Mirabella. This photo was taken looking north, just north of Via Laguna. You can see the street has curb and gutter, sidewalks, and street lights. And towards the northern end of the street, towards Via Mariano, you can see that there's sort of a slope up there, a little bit of a road grade. Now, to give a little bit of a background, we received this petition in September of this year. It had a 78% support rate for the installation of speed humps along the street. So shortly after, we collected traffic speed and volume data, and the data, findings, and recommendations are included in the staff report this evening. We mailed out, prior to this meeting, about 150 notifications to the neighborhood to invite the residents to come out, share their thoughts and concerns with the Traffic Commission, so they can, the Commission can develop a recommendation on this petition request. Now, the city's speed hump policy is documented by resolution. It's Resolution 2009-45, and there's 9 key criteria that we look at. This graphic here shows 4 of the measurable criteria that we look at. There's a petition rate, daily traffic volume along the street, speed requirement, and residential street requirement. Now, when we looked at the data for Via Mirabella, it did not meet all of the city speed hump policy requirements. It met our petition rate and residential street requirement. However, it did not meet the traffic volume requirement nor the speed requirement. A couple other items worth noting for Via Mirabella in terms of speed are what we call the 85th percentile speed. Most of the traffic's traveling at a speed of 30 miles an hour or less to the north of Via Laguna and 32 miles an hour or less to the south of Via Laguna. In terms of collision history, we did find over a 5.5-year period, there was 1 collision reported within this petition zone. Speed was a factor in the incident. However, due to the vehicular horseplay nature of the incident may not have been correctable with speed humps or speed cushions. On the topic of speed cushions, the city recently adopted a practice to install speed cushions instead of speed humps due to concerns over neighborhood response times. And so this photograph here shows what a speed cushion looks like. It's a modified version of a speed hump. It has open slots, and it's much more user-friendly for larger emergency vehicles. This is an installation in Newbury Park along Northam Avenue, And the speeds with this type of device keep speeds down to about 25 miles an hour. Now, if speed cushions were ultimately approved for this street, here's a schematic diagram showing a layout of about 5 speed cushions spaced about 300 to 400 feet apart along the street. And we found that this type of spacing maintains a steady pace along the entire road segment so that there's no need to speed up or slow down if they're spaced further apart. With speed cushions, we generally don't expect traffic to divert to other streets. In this exhibit, it shows 3 streets in yellow that serve as alternate routes to Mirabella within the neighborhood. We have had 10 cases in the city where speed humps and speed cushions have been approved for installation by the City Council where the speed hump policy guidelines have not been fully met. And this is the listing of those 10 streets. Our staff report includes the special considerations cited by the council to support these installations. If the commission votes to recommend the installation of speed cushions for this street, we'll prepare a report for City Council, and the reasons to support the deviation from the speed hump policy should be clearly explained. So with that, the recommendation is in the staff report. This concludes the presentation, and we're ready to answer any questions of the commission. Oh, one more thing. I would like to add that we did receive 9 emails from the public, and we provided you copies of that before this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko. Are there any comments from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Engler?
Thank you, Chair. Was there an education program or speed awareness program that was participated in by this community before the measure came to us?
No, that wasn't performed. We received Petition in September. Shortly after, we received a phone call requesting interest in our city speed hump program.
Is this a program that people usually participate in? And your in the resolution regarding speed humps, the adoption of the speed humps, the way it reads, it sounds as if that has to be met before we can actually consider this as a next step or consideration for the recommendation for council.
Yes, that is correct. It is in the resolution. However, in most of our recent requests for the speed hump requests, we have not required the residents to go through that process. I mean, it's always something that we can have them do. However, we didn't feel it's a necessary component. Ultimately, they would like us to review the statistics of the street, and they did provide the petition. So we just decided it was prudent to move forward with the investigation.
Are there any other? Yes.
Jim, of the 10 that are approved not meeting the specifications, how many of those sections are not related to shortcutting? Are there any other sections that have already been approved that don't meet standards?
Okay, the listing of those 10 streets with all the circumstances that were cited, they are on page 4 or page 7 and 8 of the staff report. So there's 2 columns there, one that shows the street, and then on the right side it shows a column with all the circumstances cited. So if you look through there, it'll list whether or not shortcut traffic was identified as a reason.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, as I recall, as memory serves me correct, somewhere around 10, 11 years ago, did we not have an issue with the drop-off and pickup at that Sycamore Canyon school on the east side and the south side where the teacher parking was? And I think we proposed some kind of resolution to that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. The way this community is built, there's very few ways out of it. And as I see, Mirabella is probably the primary exit for that whole community. So if we do put cushions on that, will that divert any of that traffic over to that drop-off zone? Because the front of the school is on the east side, so it can only divert the traffic to Calle del Prado. Do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, that's the school's drop-off and pickup points are along Calle del Prado and Via Rio. And yes, Calle del Prado would serve as a convenient alternate route in and out of that neighborhood. Luckily, one thing that it does not have is residential frontage. It just has school frontage to the south of Villa Laguna. So that's one of the positives if it becomes a route that's where neighborhood traffic shifts over to.
Okay. And one other question I have on Villa Laguna, and I did drive the neighborhood and get a sense of what was going on there. It seems like people that are trying to get on Mirabella must probably have to wait there at busy times to make a left to get out. One thing I didn't note, though, and maybe you could help me out, is there any line-of-sight issues at that stop sign there? Because it's only a stop sign on Villa Laguna.
Not that I'm aware of, but that's something that we can review in more detail. But as far as I know, we're not aware of a side distance issue there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Mr. Lemo.
I will apologize up front in that this is, while it may be my first meeting, I was on the commission for about 9 years. And first of all, you are right. It was looked at, and they did, with our help and others, get a solution for a drop-off. Learned some very interesting things while being on the commission, and did some checking this last week, and it proved out about 90% of the people that are speeding in that area live in that area. If you've taken a look at speed humps almost everywhere else, if it's available, they do divert onto other streets. And at some point, you can't put speed humps on every street. Why this has become more of an issue now is the speeding in that area was so bad that the main shortcut was taken through the YMCA shopping center. And now there are speed humps throughout the YMCA shopping center. It's virtually impossible to even go pick up a sandwich there without with going over 5 or 6 miles an hour. They're all very close together. And the point that I think we need to understand is that they don't always serve the purpose it seems they're going to serve. There are speeding issues all over there. But I think that most of them are not. You can't really speed during the hours when there's kids there. The parents bringing kids and dropping off and the lining up to do that properly really has a unique way of controlling the speed. But I don't think we get the desired results, especially when only one of the warrants has been met. And I think you would see the reason that warrant was met was it was 37 households. And that's how the percentage got so high. I think it was 20-some out of that 37. So I think that speed humps don't solve the problem you're trying to solve. I do think the other staff solutions work, but we also have to understand they're going to work on a very short-term basis. The first 10 days that you put up one of those signs that show you the speed, a lot of people aren't sure if there's not a cop nearby, so they all follow the sign. Other than the next 2 weeks, people slow down to see if it's really got their speed or the guy or gal next to them. But what really is, has to take place, and in that neighborhood we're fairly lucky, it should take place with the HOA, because that's what we had to do on the other side, explaining that there's going to be further crackdowns, but the speed's not going to be tolerated. And when it comes in with the bill that you get every month from the HOA, it works a lot better than throwing in a lot of speed humps.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. Yes, we have public comments coming up. Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to ask Sergeant Clifton. Is this school on your radar so far as the motors, checking it and handing out tickets?
Very much so. We're there. We have 30 different schools in the city, as you well know, and it's definitely on our list, and we rotate around. There's a lot of turn issues into the school where they're not supposed to turn. That's very high on our list, and we do a lot of enforcement with turn issues going in and out of the school. And speed on both sides, parking issues on Via Laguna, pickup times, people block people's driveways. We're there as much as we are in any other school.
Do you feel enforcement would solve more enforcement would solve the issues?
If we could do more enforcement, I mean, it's like the commissioner said, it's limited. You can't stay on it for long enough, it seems, to get the solutions that we're looking for. We have to go to the next location.
All right. Is speeding one of the things that you notice, or is it really U-turns where they shouldn't and other?
More turning issues than speed. In the big scheme of things, the Mirabella is not that long of a street to get the speeds that we're seeing in other parts of the town. I'm not saying there's not speeding there, but we'll triage different streets for speed enforcement.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question for Mr. Machiko. As I'm listening, I'm understanding that this is really not so much a speeding problem because we don't meet the warrant of 75% over the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. The requirement is that there must be at least 75% above 25 miles an hour, and our numbers are at about 60%. The 85th percentile speed here, the area segment north of Laguna, it's about 30 miles an hour. To the area south, which is fronted by those three homes, it was measured at 32 miles an hour. If you recall in the past, most of our residential collector streets that get shortcut traffic or serve a larger neighborhood, on those streets the speeds are just slightly higher, maybe about 34, 35 miles an hour. So Via Mirabella, the speeds were slightly less than some of our other bigger residential streets.
Understood. When the when the petition was presented to the city, what was the chief complaint?
I believe it was speed. Generally, when these petitions are submitted, it's the primary concerns are over speed.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right, now it's time for public comments on this item. Ms. Zambrano, you want to explain the procedure, please?
Yes. Again, anyone wishing to address the Commission on agenda items may do so by filling out a speaker card or written statement card. Speakers are allowed 5 minutes, and we currently have 3 speaker cards for this particular item. The first speaker is Nicole Mitchell, followed by Sharon Moret, and followed then by Andy Levine.
So, Nicole Mitchell, come to the podium. The second speaker was Ms. Moret, and could they approach a chair next to the podium so when one speaker leaves the podium, the next one can be right there, please? Thank you. Please state your name and city of residence.
Nicole Mitchell, Newberry Park. I live on Via Mirabella at 102 Via Mirabella. I've lived there for 13 years. I'm also a teacher at the school at Sycamore Canyon, and I've been a teacher there for 12 years. So I drive that traffic circle a lot. On Via Mirabella, when you're driving north on the street, coming up the street, once cars go through the traffic circle, we have the new traffic circle they installed not that long ago. Cars pick up speed right in front of the park there, and they start going pretty fast. They don't realize if they're continuing straight on Via Mirabella that they're entering a residential neighborhood quite often, and it goes from a double yellow line to no line at all in the center of the road. And I think a lot of times drivers, especially we have a lot of young teenage drivers in the neighborhood, get carried away and they forget that they're entering a residential neighborhood, and they do drive quite fast up and down the street. My biggest concern is the kids walking to school, because we do have a lot of kids in that neighborhood that go to Sycamore Canyon. In that neighborhood, they predominantly walk to school. And it concerns me because we also don't have a crosswalk at that intersection. And we have cars speeding in the school traffic circle. They're turning right onto Via Laguna from Via Mirabella, and there's no crosswalk for the kids to cross the street there. So anyone coming down from that neighborhood has the traffic circle for the school is to turn right. So all the parents driving in to drop off their kids are turning right, and the kids coming down from the neighborhood don't have a safe access there to cross the road. What I would like to see happen and what I would propose is an additional stop sign there so that the cars that are traveling up the street stop and they recognize that they're entering a residential neighborhood. And also the cars turning right will allow a safe access for the kids with a crosswalk crossing the street there. I've seen a lot of really, really close calls. And like I said, I drive it multiple times a day. I live on the street and I work at the school. So I'm constantly going through there, walking through there. I really worry about that intersection of Via Laguna and Via Mirabella and someone getting hurt there. The cars on Via Laguna have a stop sign. And so to turn left, they typically, during school traffic, they assume that all the cars are turning right. But for those of us that live on the street also, they're not yielding because they assume everybody's turning right. So I know that because I live on the street, I always slow way down. But people who don't live on the street are not expecting cars to turn left in front of them like that. So I think a three-way stop or even just adding a stop sign for the cars traveling up the street, they would really recognize that they're entering a residential zone. It would be safe for the kids walking to and from school because that is the most direct route from our neighborhood for the kids to get to school. And I think it might alleviate some of our problems. I'm a proponent of the speed cushions, but I also think a stop sign is a very possible solution that might work in that situation. And I don't know if anyone has looked into that or not, but at the very least, I would love to see a crosswalk there for the kids.
Thank you. Mr. Mashiko, would you... hold on one sec. Mr. Mashiko, would you address Nicole's concerns, please?
Okay. The concern was basically whether or not the intersection of Via Mirabella and Via Laguna would qualify for a multi-way stop sign. I think that's what I heard there. Typically, if the intent is to use that to control speed, that's not what stop signs are used for. They're there to regulate right-of-way at busy intersections. So for that to happen, what we'd have to do is count the volume of traffic from all three approaches. That's a T intersection. And it would need to qualify a certain volume threshold for at least 8 hours of the day. And for this situation, we'd be looking at least 500 cars per hour total in the intersection. And at least 200 of the vehicles would be coming from the minor street approach, which is Via Laguna. And just based on the volume levels that we see, it's probably not likely it's going to meet those volume levels. We have had I guess situations or where that when stop signs are used or installed where they're not warranted, there's some unintended consequences where you have poor driver behavior. The motors tend to blow through the stop sign, they ignore them, or there's a potential for rear-end collisions because it becomes a location where you don't anticipate a stop sign to be posted at that particular location. That location also does have a marked crosswalk on the north side of the leg. The idea behind that is to keep the pedestrians on that side of the street versus on the south side where you have a heavy right turn volume. So the intent is have the pedestrians, when they cross through that intersection, cross along the north side, walk all the way on the north side of the street along Laguna, and then make their way down Calle del Prado to the school, which is a much safer route for them to take. Because when they get to the intersection of Calle del Prado, I believe there's a stop sign there posted, which they can use to cross the street safely at that location.
Thank you.
Can
Nicole,
I say one
there's-
thing? The crosswalk would serve for kids. Most of the kids in our neighborhood don't go over to Calle del Prado and go down to school that way because the main entrance of the school is on Via Rio. And so they travel straight down via Mirabella on that side of the road opposite the park because that's the fastest route down. So they don't go over to Calle del Prado because then they have to backtrack on Via Rio. So the main entrance to the school is on Via Rio. So they travel straight down via Mirabella and take a left on Via Rio. So the only way to safely cross, they would cross over to the park side of the street, travel down, and then they would have to cross back at Via Rio. And the kids don't do that.
All right, Nicole, you're getting off subject tonight. We're discussing speed cushion installations.
Okay.
The proper place for you to make these comments is during public comments at a future meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
That's fine.
I misunderstood. Yeah, I
keep on
just
track here.
it's the speed issue on Via Mirabella is
Good.
what I am addressing.
We have one clarification from Mr. Gregory.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of where she wanted the crosswalk. So that is at Via Laguna,
Via Laguna and Via Mirabella.
correct?
The kids traveling straight down Via Mirabella that want to continue to the front of the school don't have a crosswalk.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lemon.
Yes. First of all, there is, if I'm not mistaken, there is a stop sign at Via Laguna and Via Mirabella for the Via Laguna traffic. Is that correct? All right. And so that stop sign is, in fact, doing what it's supposed to do as far as establishing right-of-way. I don't know what other commissioners, I don't think any other commissioners were here, but Commissioner Gregory and I years ago had to go to a stop sign seminar. And the fact of the matter is, if we use a stop sign ever to control speed, City of Thousand Oaks is hanging out with liability all by itself because the state code will not back you up. Stop signs are not used to control speed. That's just one thing. The other thing that I'm concerned about with a crosswalk on a side of the street where there is no stop sign is you're now sending a confusing signal for the drivers coming from Via Mirabella because they can make that right-hand turn. In fact, I think they've actually been instructed to, as part of the drop-off, make that turn. And so I think that the other measures that are recommended by staff might actually get us more results in the short term. I can't speak to the long term. Because changing the dynamics of that neighborhood don't fit with what code is. So I just wanted to express that, make sure I had that right.
Nicole, you can't speak from the floor, only from the podium.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it possible to put the diagram back up so you can see what I'm referring to? The zoomed in map of the neighborhood, or no?
Mr. Michigo, do you want to continue the conversation about crosswalks? Yes. No, this isn't. Yeah, no.
Okay, yeah, I think typically the protocol that we follow is we hear all the comments from all the speakers, and then we'll come back to staff for comments in regard to what comments were made by the speakers. And then we,
even though it's off topic.
Yeah, we'll comment on all the issues that were brought up, whether it's related to speed or other related issues, school zone issues.
Understood.
Oh, no, I can't. Are we putting it on?
Okay, so I think what we're going to have to do is move on to the next speaker, and then...
All right, thank you. And the speaker after Sharon Moret is Andy Levine. Or Levine?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sharon Moret, and I live in the La Cresta tract. of Dos Vientos. I'm also deaf, and I should have called in advance for assistance for the meeting because I'm not hearing anything. At any rate, I am not for the speed bumps. I am for extra law enforcement, and the whereas I'm not seeing terrible problems on via Mirabella, although they probably do exist. There are probably so because the school was built much bigger than expected. We were told that they basically the city council gave the school district a choice of having 2 different sites, and the school district thought that they wouldn't need it, and thus they only took 1 site. And because of that, it really has caused traffic problems in the area. There are approximately 1,450 students there. The school district thought that there wouldn't be enough students because parents raising a family would not be able to afford those homes. But the homes are very big, and they're not meant for, just 1 or 2 people. So I don't know how they misjudged that, but that happened. At any rate, although I'm not for speed humps, I am for law enforcement, and I would like to ask also the sheriff some information too. I have twice had problems progressing on Via Laguna past Via Mirabella to make a right turn on Calle del Prado. And what has happened is cars are just sitting on Via Laguna, and they are not making the right turn because they want to get into the lane that's closest to the curb, and it's not available. And so I had to finally, there was a policewoman that was there, and this happened twice, but and one of the times there was a policewoman that was there, and but she was dealing with the situation across the street on Via Laguna. I felt in some ways of stopping my car and getting out and asking her, pointing out that there's a problem over here with the cars not moving. They should be told that that stop sign does not mean that they can stay there for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that they need to move on. And that for that reason, they need law enforcement, because what happens when there's an emergency? I know I had to get to a doctor's appointment. A person was at my doctor's office ready to give me some tests, and he was sort of like their specialty because of they asked him to come, but I couldn't get to the appointment on time because the cars were just sitting there. And then another time it happened as well. One of the times was at 8:11 in the morning. Another time was in the afternoon. And so in case there's a fire, in case of any emergency, the parents are just too complacent, too used to just sitting, and they have to realize they're not supposed to be parked. They're supposed to, this is the line of traffic. And I was wondering, and this would be a question that I have, could I have gotten out of that lane that's nearest the sidewalk on Via Laguna and then kept on going, and could I have made a right turn on the left side of the people that are stopped at the stop sign? Is that allowed or not allowed? And how can we possibly get those cars moving that if that first lane that's by the curb is not available to them, they should be taking the next lane, and if they have to, if they can never find their way back to that right curb lane which they want to be at, they could cross the way and go to the park and park there and then walk their children to school. And that is my question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moret. I'm going to have Sergeant Clifton address concerns.
If I understand you correctly, you're talking about cars queuing up to pick up their children on Via Laguna, and they're against the curb because they're waiting to make the right turn on the Via Rio? If you would have enough room to answer your question, to pass those cars that are against the curb and make your right turn.
Could I make a right turn on top of them?
They're next,
Get into the lane that's...
they're next to the curb, so you would have enough room to make the right turn, yes.
So I would be able to get out of the line of the cars and then make a right turn.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Mashiko, do you have anything to add?
No further comments.
Any comments from the commissioners? Thank you. Ms. Moret, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Next speaker is Andy Levine, to be followed by Mr. Scott.
I'm Andy Levine, Newberry Park, California, and like the last speaker said, I live in that area too, and I don't think the speed bumps would help, but what's terrible is people, I mean, my mom tried to call the school, and the school says, we can't do anything, but I think maybe if we have a couple police people there enforcing the rules, the parents will get the idea that they cannot be just sitting there, or they could park in the community center and wait for their kids there. Because, I mean, if there's an emergency, we're all going to be trapped with all the students. And I think we should have more law. I mean, I know the police can only do so much, but they need more latitude to do more tickets and maybe doing the fines a little bit higher so people understand that we live in the community too. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Levine. Are there any comments, Mr. Mashiko, addressing Mr. Levine?
No comments.
Any comments from the commissioners? All right. The next speaker will be Mr. Scott. And I'm sorry, I'll murder your first name.
No, that's okay. It's common. So I'm Scott Goldbrunson, and I live right down the street from Nicole.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I called you Mr. Scott. You had your name.
Oh, I wrote my last name first. Sorry.
All right.
So Scott Goldbrunson, 135 via Mirabella, and I live right down the street from Nicole. So I appreciate, first of all, everyone's time to understand this issue, because unfortunately, it does sound like there might have been some uncertainty as to the request, and it is around the rate of speed on that street. So, and as mentioned, there are some items involved. There's a crosswalk, but I think Nicole mentioned it well, that I think there is that confusion around moving out of going north up the street from the park, the school, the village marketplace, and then going into a residential area. I think there's still some confusion as to that transition. And what happens is, because it seems like the traffic does go that direction as it goes to other parts of the neighborhood north of there, I think that confusion is something that's real. And we're speaking anecdotally to the rates of speed. Certainly the testing that was done is a surprise to me, because it seems like routinely there are cars that are exceeding that 32-mile-an-hour average, or 75%, whatever it was. So I would be curious, do we know the range of speeds that are rated at the high end? I didn't see that part in the report, but because there does seem to be, maybe it's a small number of cars, but a certain number of cars are exceeding that average by quite some area. And I routinely find myself standing on the street telling people, slow down, and it doesn't seem to be effective. My point is, I know that in the past there have been exceptions made depending on the area. And as noted, there's a fairly large park right across from the school, and then a fairly large school area as well. So with those exceptions in place, or aware, it does seem like there does need to be some type of remediation around the issue of the speed in that area. And I know that it didn't meet the criteria for the speed cushion, speed bump or hump, but I wasn't sure, are those criteria the same for the speed cushion?
Yes.
Because it wasn't clear because it speaks to the pros and cons, and they are they interchangeable? Is that my understanding? Okay, it wasn't clear when they talked about option 1 that it says speed hump criteria are not satisfied, but then we're speaking about speed cushions. So just wanted to clarify. In reading the letter, and I don't know how much time I have left, but I appreciate the opportunity. What were the recommendations from the city? Was it just law enforcement and some temporary items? Is that what I understood from the letter, Mr. Machida?
Okay, well, we're going to answer all the questions.
Okay.
I'm writing down all the questions now,
Okay.
so
I wasn't, because there
concluding?
had been reference to options and recommendations, so I wasn't clear as to where we ended up. So
Yes. This is your conclusion now?
I guess my conclusion is the rate of speed is a problem there, and there are exceptions that have been made before. And I think something needs to be done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for taking the time to address us. It's much appreciated. Mr. Machiko?
Okay. There's questions about the range of speeds, and during the presentation I discussed the area north of Via Mirabella, where most of those homes are located. What we call the 85th percentile speed. That's the speed of cars that 85% of the traffic is driving at or below. The measurement up in that area was 30 miles an hour. So 85% of the cars north of Via Laguna were measured at 30 miles an hour or less. And in terms of the upper end speeds, we do find that most of the speeds were below 35, and then we do have a couple percentage above the 35 mile per hour range between 35 to 45, but that's only about 3 to 5% of the traffic, which is the minority. In terms of I think the question was answered. Are speed cushions the same criteria as speed humps? The answer is yes. The speed cushions is a new device that we're using now versus the speed humps in the past. I had a photograph showing the speed cushion is a device that has open slots, which is much easier for fire trucks when they drive through them. Has less impact to their suspension, and they are gentler on vehicles, but they do keep speeds down to 25 miles an hour. And in terms of what are the other options other than speed cushions for this street, our staff report identifies there's additional police enforcement that could be implemented, the radar speed feedback sign that could be supplemented for those police enforcement activities. We can take a look at the speed limit signs. I know there is a speed limit sign posted northbound as you enter the residential zone. We could possibly make that sign a little bit larger so it really stands out. The homeowners association, they can maybe work together if there is a homeowners association up there, since most of the traffic up in that area is most of the local residents, because Via Mirabella, north of Laguna, it does not take you to another part of the city. It doesn't carry what we call crosstown traffic. So the speeders up in that area more or less are your neighbors. And then the other option is what we call the neighborhood speed awareness program, where residents, they can work together. They can use our radar equipment to monitor speeds. What they do is they record license plates of vehicles that are driving above a certain threshold. They would go out during probably the busier times, because that's when the most of the traffic is happening, and the speeders are sent letters from the police department. If they're sent a third letter based on the number of observations that occur, then they would get a visit after the third letter from the police officer. So those are the other options available.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Do any commissioners have questions of the speaker? Thank you. Ms. Zambrano, According to my notes, we do not have any written statement cards on this subject.
No, we have not received written statement cards.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions of staff? Mr. Gregory, please.
Sure. At Via Laguna, you had said that you could check the line of sight issue there. And if I recall correctly, we took out a crossing guard that wasn't being used. So if that's still available, should we get a count of the number of kids, utilizing that area? See if it might be appropriate to reassign resources for that, in lieu of the fact that we really can't put a three-way stop sign unless there is a line of sight issue. No stop sign, no three-way can go in there. It's a liability issue. But a crossing guard might be a possibility. Don't know what the student head count is. Also, is it possible, the very first speaker, Nicole, I believe it was, thank you, when she had observed that as people enter the residential zone, they maintain their speed, let's say. Can we look at the signage in that area? Maybe, post 25 on the street, something a little more visible to remind people that the traffic condition has changed. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I've noted those three items: line of sight study at Via Laguna, at Via Mirabella, whether or not the intersection pedestrian count qualifies for crossing guard, and then the third one is as you travel northbound from the area that doesn't have frontage, the transition into the residential area, taking a look at the speed limit signs and maybe perhaps making it larger, and then supplementing that with a stencil in the pavement to remind drivers what the speed limit is.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of staff from the commissioners? Good. In light of that, do we have a motion? Commissioner Lemo.
I'd like to make the motion that we accept staff's recommendation as submitted with some of the minor adjustments and suggestions made by Commissioner Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Ms. Zambrano, it's time for our vote. You want discussion yet? Okay.
I have a question regarding your motion. Does the staff require us to pick an option besides just what was stated? On the recommendations, we've got increase the, let's see, there's, well, not just the staff recommendation, but there's also options in our report, such as police enforcement, radar speed display panel, increase the number and size of speed limit signs, and you're kind of referring to
that's actually in the staff's recommendation.
It's in it?
Number
okay.
2, radar feedback sign, supplemented enforcement traffic conditions for installation of speed humps are not met.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is that we be a little more involved with the educational program and the possibly the speed awareness program, if that's appropriate. Is that
Mr. Lemo, would you like to add that to your motion?
I have a quick question. Is there cost and staff time involved in that?
Well, basically, we would meet with the residents on the neighborhood speed awareness program. We would meet with the residents, train them how to use the radar equipment. But there's really no additional cost for something like that.
I'd be willing to do it if we did it through the HOA. I think they've got a strong HOA on that side, and if anybody's going to get anybody to a meeting, it would be them.
So, would you restate the motion then to include that?
My motion would stand to be what I said it was as far as the staff recommendation, and incorporating Commissioner Gregory's suggestion for some of the graphics in the area, and Commissioner Engler's suggestion that through the Homeowners Association on what is the east side of Dos Vientos Homeowners Association, we offer them the training to use their the different equipment we have, and making their homeowners aware of what the challenge is in that area. That's my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. Do we have a second? Thank you. Ms. Zambrano, time to take the vote.
When I call your name, please say yes or no. Commissioner Engler?
Yes.
Commissioner Gregory?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Simpson?
Yes.
And Chair Reeder?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Ms. Zambrano, would you like to address the...
The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend a council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk's office within 14 calendar days of this decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The appeal fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary.
Thank you. This brings us to item 8B, the Traffic Commission start time being changed to 6 p.m. from 6:30 p.m. This is an action item. It will require a vote. Mr. Machiko?
Yes, I just have a very brief verbal report on this one. Is that this was an item that was on last month's agenda. We deferred that for this month when we have a full Traffic Commission of 5 members present. So we have that today. So the staff report gives a brief history of our prior start times. I think we started as late as 7:30 a number of years ago. It's currently at 6:30, but recently our Planning Commission changed their start time to 6 p.m. I believe we are basically the last commission that has a later start time. So in terms of uniformity, this is something that the Traffic Commission can discuss to determine whether or not it's appropriate to change our start time to be uniform with the rest of the other committee and commissions in the city.
Thank you. Is there any discussion among the commissioners? Ms. Engler?
Thank you, Chair. I am for it. I'd like to be consistent. So as we all know that other boards are meeting at 6, that this advisory commission also meets at 6. I think it will help just understanding the continuity of times.
Thank you. Ms. Zambrano, are there any public comments?
There are no public speaker cards or written statement cards for this particular item.
I don't have a speaker card. All right, you may approach the podium.
Nick Kidwai, still Director, Concerned City of Thousand Oaks. Honorable Chair, Traffic Commissioners. This is the most appalling discussion and report that I've seen in a long time. We have an Amgen executive sitting there who just got a master's degree and she is kind of typical of the professionals that live in this community, to say that the citizens would be confused with a different time, especially for 25 years. This commission has been meeting at 7:30, and there's been no problem. In fact, this commission was known as the friendly commission, so I almost thought of not wearing my council tie because it's open, and I love your timing system that you have. You're not spending a lot of money. Don't know if you have the cloud for it or not. I love the voice vote. I haven't listened to the traffic commission for a long time. The new software for the city council for the voice vote, etc., is $241,000. That's the base price. So no wonder people are upset, including me. And what's the difference in the later time? It makes it easier for people to have one of my problems in attending the meetings is I don't have dinner. I have dinner at 9 o'clock because I can't have dinner early. I'm not hungry enough. And people have kids. They have to feed them, etc., make the dinner, etc. And so 7:30 is what is the elected body in this community that has the highest respect? It's the Kaneho Rec and Park District. Does anybody know what time they meet? 7:30. They have public comments at the beginning, they have public comments at the end, and they really have no timer. I only went there once recently and felt really proud to be a Thousand Oaks citizen. And that's what I want you folks to be, is to think about the citizens. Go to Glendale, Burbank, Norwalk, Santa Monica. I travel a lot, and I try to read the agendas. Their committees meet at what time? 11 in the morning, at 2 in the afternoon. Who participates? Old fogies like, I'm getting there. I'm not that old, but I'm getting there. That's why I can say it, old fogies that are retired. It's not for working people. That's what it is. You don't want the people in their prime to give advice, which is completely wrong and goes against the democratic process. So I may be blowing wind to say, in fact, you went already 1 hour from 7:30 to 6:30, and to cut another half hour, it would be a very shameful act. And these things are not easy. There's a cost to government. There's a whole resolution that an attorney makes out, and it's fine the people. So it's not like a simple thing, and it should really not be changed, in my humble opinion. This is the facetious argument that you save another half hour. People have said, well, it's midnight, this meeting is going long. Midnight from 6 o'clock is 6 hours. How many hours do I work? 10, 12 hours. American works 8 hours a day. So basically, I won't upset the staff, but that's one of the things is the staff wants to go home early. And I think commissions, especially since you are meeting so few times, doesn't make any difference to you. Be receptive and kind to the taxpayers, and have the maximum amount of participation. I'm glad. In fact, you seem to have more people here than City Council. So that's bravo to you. You are good people. Please do the right thing. Do not change this from 6:30 to 6 o'clock. And trust the people. We won't get lost. We are not sheep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. We appreciate your input. Are there any other public speakers? Thank you. Any more discussion from the commissioners? Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, since we're the last ones, have any of the other commissions had public participation diminish because of the time change?
We haven't heard of anything related to that. Generally, it's related to the turnout is generally linked to the items on the agenda. If there's a large interest, you're going to have a large turnout, regardless of what the start time is.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from the commissioners? Commissioner Lemo?
Well, I'm going to support the staff recommendation. I don't find it appalling whatsoever. I think that just to set the record straight, because I have that habit and I'm not going to shirk away from that, the staff doesn't work 8 hours a day, and whoever has made that false misleading calculation. I think we should see if City Council would appropriate a calculator so that you could get above the 10 or 12 hours a day that are put in by staff on a regular basis. I think what's important to keep in mind here is it is rude to the public to think that we, for our own convenience or for whatever reason, can have a different time than every other commission. I know that most of the people I know in this community are very, very busy, mostly with family or sports, things related to kids, and knowing that there is a general time that every commission starts is simply a courtesy. And I think that, we've gone a long time having our own special way for a variety of reasons, most of which seemed good at the time, but it's simply respect for the citizens and courtesy to have that consistency. That's number one. Number two, I don't think that we should make the assumption that the only reason someone couldn't come to a meeting was because they don't have continued education in a master's or a PhD. Believe me, I've had 3 sons grow up in this area, and I missed meetings simply by being confused by schedule. And now I have an excuse because I'm old enough to be confused by schedule. But I think that what we need to do is put the citizens first and put schedule first. And yes, if that can take and trim a half hour or 40 minutes off staff's day, I think that's good as well. One of the things that staff said, which I happen to know to be the truth, is very seldom in 9 years did I ever see the same person come to 2 meetings. They only came if there was a particular issue that they were interested in. And there they had so much time in the process that they knew what time the hearing was going to be and they could plan for it. And so for that reason, I think we should do the right thing and get consistent with all of the commissioners. We're not any more special than any of the rest.
Thank you, Commissioner Lemo. Any further discussion before? May we have a motion, please? Do we have a motion already?
I'll restate a motion that we adjust our start time to 6 p.m. in the evening.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Ms. Zambrano, can we take a hand vote?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Voter participation.
Thank you very much. This brings us to item 8C, which is a report from the traffic engineer, Mr. Sweeting. The topic is emergency vehicle preemption at traffic signals. This is an informational item only. There will be no vote required. Mr. Sweeting?
Thank you, Commissioners. As stated, this is a informational item only, and there will be no action. Mr. Reeder requested this topic be brought to the Commission at the last October meeting regarding the traffic signal preemption. So traffic signal emergency preemption is basically where a traffic signal is given a green light for an emergency vehicle in the direction of their travel while providing a red light for all the other movements. So I'll provide some background information and then also information of how they work. So back in the spring of 2011, there were 3 agencies, Thousand Oaks, Simi Valley, and Ventura, along with 2 of the fire departments, that worked to collaborate on choosing a preemption device that could be utilized Ventura County-wide. And for the city of Thousand Oaks, we had a small segment on Moore Park Road and utilizing one brand, and then on Hillcrest we utilized another brand. So after evaluating those 2 systems, about 6 months later we all reconvened and we had traffic engineers from the 3 agencies, fire chiefs and fire captains, and traffic signal maintenance personnel go over the different aspects of those systems. And the preferred unit was the Global Traffic Technologies, or the GTT Opticom system. Primarily, that system was chosen because, in particular with fire vehicles, they do supplement each other in different agencies. So if they had to go from one city to another, they would work seamlessly. So currently in the city of Thousand Oaks, we have 132 traffic signals, of which 43 are equipped with the emergency device. There are 4 at the Caltrans, totaling 47. In comparison, for the city of Simi Valley, they have 121 signals and 28 Opticom devices. Here is a basic map of where they're located. In blue, in the blue diamonds are the 5 fire stations that utilize the system. And you can see with the purple dots, they're basically along the heavier traveled corridors throughout town. And so the city and the fire department kind of collaborated on where the best installation would be for those units. Currently right now, the city of Thousand Oaks has 7 emergency vehicles at the 5 different locations. And just recently, in the last couple months, Ventura County Sheriff's Department has also added 4 to their units. And currently, at this time, there's no ambulance service that has that. All 7 of the emergency vehicles from Ventura County Fire and the 4 from Ventura County Sheriff's were purchased and installed, and they're maintained by their own department. And then the city of Thousand Oaks maintains the traffic signal. So basically, this is how it works. When a emergency vehicle enters a preempt zone, it sends a signal up to a satellite, which then transmits down to the traffic signal. And then from there it goes to our traffic signal equipment, which then preempts the traffic signal, giving them a green. So when a emergency vehicle is within the preempt zone, which is generally speaking about a half mile out in any of the 4 directions of an intersection, the signal gets a preemption. And as long as that vehicle is within that preempted zone, it will remain green until either the emergency vehicle leaves the zone, or if it parks in the case of a collision at an intersection, once the emergency vehicle puts their brake on, it will also then disconnect the preempt. So here's an example along Hillcrest. This will be for Fire Station 30 as they go eastbound on Hillcrest towards Moore Park and Hillcrest. As they're going in that direction, it would essentially preempt all 3 of those signals at one time as they enter that zone, and then they leave. And then try to designate with that fire truck, there's a yellow arrow. So if they were to put their blinker on, it actually knows where the next intersection for them to go upstream, to go down to Moore Park and Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and preempt that signal in advance. So then by doing so, it tries to clear out the intersection before the fire vehicle or police station gets there. And in particular, in this particular location is especially necessary this time of year with all the shopping centers in that region. There are 2 times in which the preemption would not occur, and that is if there's an active flashing walk or don't walk, it would not preempt because we still need to allow the pedestrian to get across the road, and railroad tracks, which obviously we don't have any here in Thousand Oaks, but obviously if you're in Simi Valley or Ventura, that would be of interest to you. And lastly, once it leaves our controller, we do get information back here at City Hall at our operations center. To the left, we can see the date and time that preemption comes in. In this case, it was 4:40 in the morning. The duration that it lasts, so there's 2 numbers here. The one on the right is 21. That's the amount of time that it was actually in the zone, but it only preempted for the 20 seconds, the number on the left. So if you see down below that, it showed 36 and 9. So even though it was within the zone for 36 seconds, it only preempted for 9. Then its location and direction. In this case, it was at Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Rancho Road going eastbound. And then lastly, who it was. So on the far right, you can see the number 10. So the 10 represents the police department. So I know that was the police department. And then below that, you see Station 31. You have a 31-1 and 31-2. So I know because Station 31 has 2 vehicles, so we can see who is preempting how long and at what time. Because sometimes we do get citizens calling saying that the signal isn't working properly. We can see whether or not it is, and if there's any preemptions. And not all vehicles have to have lights and sirens on in order to preempt, because there could be, as they explained, let's say a rattlesnake. It may be an emergency to that person, but not necessarily such that they need to go lights and sirens. So there can still be a preemption without lights and sirens. And lastly, Mr. Reeder provided this link. If you want more information about emergency preemption, you can go to this link. There's about a 7-minute video regarding it. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice report, Mr. Sweeting. I appreciate it. That was interesting. Ms. Zambrano, are there any public speakers regarding this item?
No, we have no public speakers for this
Thank
item.
You. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Engler?
I have a question, and it's not that important other than, is it initiated by the driver of the apparatus, or is it automatic?
It's initiated by the apparatus that is on the fire truck or police. So once it is within that zone that's constantly transmitting, and once it knows its latitude and longitude, once it knows it's within that zone, it transmits the signal to the satellite and then back to the traffic signal.
Any other questions or comments? I have one. I'm concerned that the ambulances don't have this. They're dealing with oftentimes life and death situations, whereas fire trucks are dealing with property damage as a rule. Why is it that the group of individuals that put this together decided not to include ambulances?
They were included, but at that time, basically most agencies don't have ambulance service as far as with their preemption program. We do allow that. They simply have not come forward. Those devices on each individual apparatus is about $5,000. So depending on which ones they want to put on, that is by the design of that company. So again, the Sheriff's Department only put it on the last 2 or 3 months, so, and they were included. But typically speaking, most agencies really only have fire department. But if they want to, we're welcome to them. They have been in touch with by our vendor and us.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeting. So to summarize then, the emergency transport vehicles are privately owned, and they have an option to be a part of this if they choose, but it will come at a cost to them. Does that summarize it?
Yes, for both. I mean, they have to have it installed and maintain it. We maintain the traffic signal portion of it, but yes, it would come at a cost to them.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'd just like to make another comment about the proximity of our hospital is also a for-profit institution. So it's not a publicly funded hospital in our community. So that also might be of interest on the topic.
Thank you, Commissioner Simpson. Appreciate it. Are we finished with this then? Thank you. This brings us to item 8D then, the Waverly Heights Neighborhood Traffic Statistics. This is an informational item as well. No votes will be taken on this tonight. And Mr. Machiko?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on some speakers that came last month and spoke under public comments. We want to let you know is that we are following up with those residents that came to our last meeting and share with you some of the data that we were collecting over the last month or so. We shared it with the residents, shared it with the school district, and it's in your packet. What you have is a neighborhood map with the traffic, 24-hour traffic volumes that we collected, and graphs showing for each location what the hourly volume levels were for those locations. We have collected additional data. We have collected the machines, I believe it was this morning, but we have not processed that data yet. But we are going to share that data with the residents, and we are looking to have a meeting in early December with the residents so we can discuss the traffic issues and concerns and see what options are available.
Thank you, Mr. Michigo. Now we have several public speaker cards regarding this matter tonight. Again, I will call the first speaker to be followed by the second speaker, which will sit behind the podium waiting to take the place of the first speaker. Our first speaker tonight is Lisa Krebs. I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you. And Ms. Krebs, if you could restate your name for the record and your city of residence.
My name is Lisa Krebs. I live in Thousand Oaks, California, at 1972 Montgomery Road. I've been a resident on Montgomery Road for over 25 years. Although, as Jim stated, we will be meeting with Jay Spurgeon on the 5th of December, and we thank you very much for your time on that. I wanted to take the opportunity tonight to address the Traffic Commission about the Kaneho Valley Unified School District's their plan to place the Kaneho Valley Learning Center at the Waverly Elementary School campus. The CVLC, as it's known, Kaneho Valley Learning Center, consists of the Continuation High School, that is Kaneho Valley High School, the Century Academy, the Alternative High School, and the new CTE, or Career Technical Education Center. This is a new concept where they would provide technical education to high school students. Technical education they already offer at each of the high schools in the Kaneho Valley Unified. And they plan to grow the program to include adult education in the evening as well. We live in a unique community. We are the only area in Thousand Oaks that's zoned for livestock, not just equestrian, but livestock. We have horses, goats, pigs, donkeys, chickens, geese. We have no sidewalks, and we have no streetlights. We are a perfect example of why speed bumps don't work, as Mr. Lemo brought up earlier. Drivers speed through our community every day to get to school on time, to cut through so they don't have to wait for traffic lights on Moore Park Road. My husband and I have been putting up with this since 1991. We've raised our 2 adult sons there, and it's time that it needs to be addressed. The CVLC will change the whole dynamic of our neighborhood. That will include teenage drivers, trash, cigarette butts, smoking off campus, a disrespect of our public property. When we moved in 1991, it was a continuation high school there. We've experienced this already. So it's taken, over 20 years for the cycle to repeat itself. And we're not going to stand for it a second time. We're currently working with the Kaneho Valley Unified School District to come up with some options, perhaps a different use for the site. And I will say that recently they have been very amenable to speaking with us. And we met with Victor Hayek, the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services at my home, for 2 hours last week. And it was a very productive discussion. You've been asked to perform the traffic study, and we truly appreciate that you are starting to address our concerns. And the CVUSD needs to have that data to be able to make an educated decision on what they're going to do with their resources. But the reason I come here tonight is to thank you for listening to us, the first time, and to thank you for being willing to listen to us again, and also to be willing to work with us. Because I'm confident that together we can move forward and we can come up with a creative solution to our problem. We have many ideas that our neighborhood group has come forward with, and we will share those with Jay on December 5th. But as a city agency, you are the first to really give us a warm welcome, and I cannot tell you how refreshing and what that means to us. So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ms. Krebs. Are there any questions of the speaker from the commissioners? No? Thank you very much for a nice presentation of your viewpoints. Our next speaker is Randy Wagner, to be followed by Brian Winnick, is it? Thank you.
Well, my name is Randy Wagner. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks in the Waverly Heights community. I was one of the persons here last meeting that spoke about this issue of traffic that has grown gradually over the years, but the issue of the repurposing of the Waverly School kind of took the pot off the boiling water, and now it's erupted and boiling over. It's kind of like a Pandora's box being opened. But again, I just want to speak now to thank the commission here and the staff. As Lisa said, you are the only public administration that is willing to listen and care to what the residents have to say. That's very refreshing to have that to actually take us seriously. So I just want to thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Brian Winnick. Please state your name for the record and city of residence.
Sure. My name is Brian Winnick. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks, Old Farm and Montgomery Road, 1990 Montgomery Road. I met some of you last month, and you were very welcoming and welcomed us back. Now we're on the agenda. My wife would like to have been here tonight, but we have children, so she's home taking care of them. But she gave me a honey-do list, so I'm going to make sure I get them covered. She had a wish list, and I'm hoping that you can fill some of them. First of all, you guys, I hope you guys know the area, Waverly Heights, the school, the Montgomery, Old Farm Road, and that whole area. Traffic had been increasing over time. We bought the house during the summertime 4 years ago. It looked a very calm street. And then here comes October 1st. All these cars just came out of nowhere, first day of school. I don't know if we were having buyer's remorse, but we loved the house. But we were just concerned for our children. But to get to the point, we were trying to figure out the best way. We don't want to kick people out of the school. We think education is important, but we just want to find the right place for them to make everybody happy. We had talked about option with the neighbors to have an access road to the school. And back of the school is the baseball field, the dog park, and whatever you want to call it back there. But the issue, what I understand, is the grade is too steep to actually build a road. But I came up with another solution. There's a baseball field back there, which is flat. Perhaps moving the baseball field to another location and then make a road to Flores so people can bypass Montgomery to Jan's Road, Moore Park, and Flores and back into the school. That's one solution. Just put the baseball field somewhere else. No through street traffic sign because we have an off ramp off Jan's Road. A lot of them cut through Montgomery to get to the road. So if we can have a closure at the end of the road, that'd be great, just to reduce traffic. Some kind of area between Cal Jasmine and Old Farm Road. Actually, since we last talked in the last month, we've had several accidents. Some of them major. A car making a left from Montgomery to Flores. There were 2 cars. 5 of them were hospitalized, and one of them was a little kid. You cannot see when you're making a left because you got down uphill, and you have cars there, so you can't see the car. You make your left, bam, you get hit. Maybe perhaps make no parking in that corner, or per stoplight, or something there, or a 3-way stop. One solution. The last 24 hours, we've had 2 accidents on Montgomery and Jan's. The street's kind of an angle. It's not a straight shot. So when you're trying to make a right toward Moore Park from Montgomery, you can't see the oncoming traffic. And that's when you get hit. Something needs to be done there. I don't know what can be done, except maybe have an arrow turn right when the light turns green. That's the only thing I could think of. That's pretty much it. and we're working with the school district. The problem is there's just too many parties involved. We have the city to work with, we have the school board to work with, the traffic commission. It's just hard to get everybody together. It's all different funding, but you guys are working hard with us to make this happen, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. May. You want to stay at the podium for one moment? Mr. Machiko, do you want to address anything?
Just the fact that I have been taking notes, so some of these issues that he brought up in terms of the site distance issue, collision history, those are some of the things that we're going to be taking a look at, and when we meet with the residents, we'll provide some of that data.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker from the commissioners?
Well, I just have a question for Mr. Machiko about the request for this traffic study. Did that come from the district or did that come from the residents?
I think it was probably got a combination of both. I think we heard that there were concerns in the neighborhood, and then our staff was working with the school district, so we heard basically from both sides. So that's why the action took place.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Mr. Quidway, to be followed by Meredith St. John. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Honorable Chair, Nick Kidwai, resident of Newbury Park, not a Waverly resident. Wish I had a goat or goats. I love sheep, but I don't want to follow sheep. First of all, I would like to salute the CVLC signs that have in the neighborhood. I mean, it shows a community that is awake and involved. I wish we could say the same thing about the whole city and the whole country. I have taken some videos, put them on my Twitter feed. If you want to go there, it's at CCT Oaks, which stands for Concerned Citizen Thousand Oaks, or on the YouTube. It's really makes you feel proud, I tell you. Even though they are doing it because they are suffering. I went into my archives from Concerned Citizens and found a one-page article from '97 when the city council had the hearing, and I was at that hearing, and that's when they acknowledged that they were not aware of the problem, and abruptly in one meeting closed the gate on Waverly, and that was it. No communication after that. The reason I'm speaking on this is I consider this a bonus card since I'm already here. Why not? Even though I've been involved in this issue because of Concerned Citizens, and I was at the school board town meeting where Mr. Spurgeon was there. And just like the other residents said, I salute this body, especially chair reader, for this is the way a meeting is supposed to be run. It's, unlike at the school board meeting where they discuss the traffic issues, they would not allow any questions. They would not allow any feedback, hold people till the end. One of the things that used to be the hallmark of this city was that to ask the secretary, are there any speakers? Rather than move on so that somebody who wants to speak or give an input is denied the opportunity because the meeting is run like it's an Indy 500. And so I really appreciate that. The negative for you on this will be I may be back again because it's enjoyable to be in front of such a wonderful body. I do have almost a technical question. I don't have a master's. It does make a difference if you are educated like Commissioner Simpson. You can read these things a little bit better. And my question is 3,264 ADTs, average daily, on Montgomery Road. What is the average typical, say, on my street of San Carlos, where there are cul-de-sacs, etc.? How high is that? And then conversely, not having a master's, I'm confused. You have 1886 on one side of Montgomery and then 3264. Is this the same cars or they are different cars? So maybe the staff would be able to tell. And then I see like on Brush Hill, 364. But I think the residents that are on Brush Hill by Colgate, etc., they feel the pain even though it's 364. So why is that? I mean, is that speeding, or is that still too high for a neighborhood with sheep and goats? I don't know. So I would like to know that. I'm also very unhappy with the trustees. One of them has gone on record and still insists that the city owes them favors. I know you don't want to get into the squabble, but I don't understand. If you watched yesterday's meeting, the city has given $1.3 million to the students through the Kaneho Valley School District. I mean, it's just the shoe is on the other foot. And one of the issues that was kind of talked about is that one of the solutions seems to be to have a road to Avenida de las Flores. And the superintendent talked about that there's going to be $1 million plus, so that's why it's not even under discussion. Is there any chance to get some rough estimate as to how much that would cost? There's no right-of-way purchase, it's just the cost of the road. So if we could get that information, that would be helpful, because that may be one of the solutions. And people say, well, she says that, well, people don't enter from there, they enter from Giants Road. Well, if they have the option, and if you in school tell them that you should take that road, I think we can improve a lot of the neighbors. It's just really bad. And we just heard earlier on about Mirabella that they goofed over there with 1,200 students at an elementary school. I mean, something is wrong with this body. So we would like to have good people with masters like Ms. Simpson sitting there and helping the residents. Thank you for letting me speak. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwell. Mr. Machiko, do you have any comments?
Yeah, basically the comment has to do with the questions that were in page 35 of the agenda packet. Is the map of the Waverly Heights neighborhood showing the traffic volumes that were measured at various points along the street. Question was whether or not the 3,264 vehicles that were measured north of Jans Road and south of Brush Hill, is that pretty typical? It's generally not. That's a pretty high volume. Rarely do we see that type of volume level in a residential neighborhood. And then also in comparison to the volume south of Flores, the volume level is 1886. That's a lower level. And the question is whether or not those cars that are up towards Flores, are those the same vehicles that are down south of Brush Hill? That's hard to gauge. We don't have equipment to determine whether or not all those cars are going all the way through. Imagine that 3264 is a combination of school traffic, neighborhood traffic, and also traffic that's cutting through the neighborhood on Montgomery Road. The other question is, Mr. Kidway asked whether or not the volume level on his street, San Carlos, whether it's typical or not. We don't have any count on his street. I don't believe so. I can't answer that question at this point. So I think those were the only comments I have.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Do the commissioners have any questions for the speaker? Yes, Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, the high traffic, the 3264. Would you think that's because if people are coming from outside the area, that's the closest freeway ramp? Because I mean, I drive that area a lot. I get off the freeway there. I take that same route. I get back on the freeway. So my son used to play ball in that field. So I know your route quite well.
You're the problem.
Yeah. Well, that was years ago. He's 27 now.
Okay. So I guess the question is whether or not is it because the fact that Flores doesn't have a freeway ramp and Jans Road does. So
correct.
Is the traffic volume of 3264 probably shortcut traffic that's coming from Flores, working its way through the neighborhood to get to the freeway ramps at Jans? Yes, the answer is yes. It's a percentage of that shortcut traffic within that 3264 number. We did perform some shortcut surveys or license plate surveys during some of the peak hours, And we did find that I believe during the morning peak hour, the shortcut percentage was about 40%, and in the evening peak hour, the shortcut percentage was about 30%.
Okay. Any chance they're ever going to put a freeway ramp at Flores?
No, we haven't heard of any plans.
Caltrans works mysterious ways, I know.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Machiko. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this matter? I had one, Mr. Machiko, and I just find it curious that one of the peak traffic times is 7 p.m. at night. Is this a usual measurement on other areas similar in our city? It seems like that's kind of a late time to have a peak traffic volume.
Okay, I'm just curious what.
Well, I was just hearing in my ear that the 7 p.m. is kind of unusual to see a high traffic volume, but I was informed that's when school then starts at this adult school.
Okay, well,
but
yeah. That's an unusual time of day, 7 p.m. Our typical commute peak is in the neighborhood about 5:15 to 5:15, 6 o'clock, somewhere in that range.
So this is all school-related traffic then? Yes. Why is it that they don't all leave at the same time?
You mean at the end of the day?
Well, at the end of the evening class.
Yes.
Is it possible to go to the podium and address your question?
Yes. Can we take your spot for a moment? Thank you.
Classes at the adult school begin at 6:30, between 6:30 and 7, and they stagger the start times to try to alleviate the traffic on our street. This is one way that the Kaneho Valley Unified has tried to be a good neighbor, but the ESL program that is run through adult education has over 800 students attending, and they come down our street at between 6:30 and 7. The traffic is so heavy that you can't even get out of your driveway. They leave from class at 9 to 9:30 at night. And you'll see another, well, I don't even know if the traffic study goes that far, but that's another time that you can't get in and out of your driveway. Those are the peaks in the evening. In the morning, when the adult education classes start, when special needs children are being dropped off, when the Century Academy children are being dropped off or driving in, again, peak traffic, you can't get out of your driveway from 7 to 8 o'clock typically. And then during the day, when most of us are at work, we don't feel the pain of their exit at between 2 and 3 o'clock.
Thank you. I can see why you're concerned.
Yes, and you know what I didn't say before is that, you know, as residents, we are so concerned about preserving our quality of life, the reason we moved into this neighborhood in the first place. And we want to preserve it, and we want to preserve our property values. Because with the traffic increase and the increase of more people coming onto that campus, should they implement the CVLC idea, it's just going to get worse. And that's why we're taking this opportunity to come to you and to, you know, make this plea to have you look at it. And we are, again, I'll tell you, we're thrilled that you're paying attention to us, because we've tolerated this volume of traffic, the speed of the traffic, for far too long for a small residential area with no streetlights and no sidewalks.
Thank you. We have one question yet.
Yes.
Commissioner Engler.
Thank you, Chair Reader. I actually, Lisa, right?
Yes.
I just actually wanted to say thank you, and thank you to everyone here in the room. We're your first opportunity for a forum to work through the issues, to talk about them, to learn about them, for all of us to be more informed about it, and then find a solution. So thank you all for coming, and we're glad to be here for you. And and that's really all I have for you. But I do have a question for Mr. Spurgeon. are you going to be in meeting with, will this meeting on the 5th, December 5th, include the school district as well?
Yes. I've shared with them the date and time. We don't have a location quite yet, but the Assistant Superintendent Victor Hayek, who was mentioned earlier, is planning to attend as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Simpson?
Mr. Spurgeon, I also have a question. Has Park and Rec been notified, and have you had any RSVPs for that meeting?
No, not at this time. We have met, city staff and the Park District and school district staff have met a couple times on this, the general issue already. Primarily, the Park District's involved if there's, is one of the proposals is to run an access road out the back of the school through the Park District. Well, part of it's school district and Park District property. So, but I'll reach out to them as well about this meeting. This is really more on city streets and city traffic there. So, I think one of the challenges that the residents have pointed out is that there are three entities here. We got city, you got the school district, you got Park District, and we all meet differently, and there's not a single forum really that avails itself to having collaborative discussions other than maybe such as a meeting like we're planning to have. So I understand that's a challenge and a frustration.
Thank you, Mr. Spurgeon. Ardith St. John, thank you for waiting. We're finally have you address us. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening, Commission and community. My name is Ardith St. John. I live at 2014 Montgomery Road. I'm a next-door neighbor, unfortunately, to the adult education school. I've been there for 46 years. I'm probably the oldest one. I'm in my 80s now, and probably been there the longest of anyone in the neighborhood, I think. But I came with no notes tonight. I submitted a written statement, but after what happened to us on the way over here tonight, I've been thinking about it, and I decided to get up and speak about it. I was coming out of my driveway and with my neighbor who lives down Old Farm Road, several homes down Old Farm, and a car came speeding down Montgomery, made a wide arc, on apparently late for class, onto Old Farm Road, entering the school. He ended up directly in front of my car, and luckily I was not going fast because I had just left my driveway, or there would have been a head-on collision. Now, he made the wide arc because there was a car parked there, so he went around it. But he veered around me and continued to speed into the school parking lot. Because I've been there this many years, over that period of time, there's been numerous close calls, and I actually had a car come through one of my corrals and enter the corral. I had a horse in it at the time. Luckily, the horse was not hit or injured. But I've just seen it all, and in 1970, it was an elementary school, and most of the children walked to school, and there was not a problem. And it changed over the years to middle school and continuation school, and it just kept growing into what it is now. And it's just totally unacceptable for our neighborhood to have that type of a school in the center of it. Because we have no sidewalks, everyone has to walk right in the street with the cars, and that's really dangerous, especially at night, very risky at night. And the statement I submitted, I'm asking for someone from the Sheriff's Department. We used to have them regularly sit under my window there and watch for the people coming around, ignoring the stop sign there. We don't see them at all anymore, and I'm not sure why. But I'm wondering, maybe you could put a camera there or something. Something needs to be there we actually one night, and we shouldn't have done it, but we did, we stopped a lot of the cars that ran through the stop sign and said, there's a stop sign there and you're disobeying the law running through the stop sign. Well, the principal came out. He never did approach us, but I'm sure he didn't appreciate us doing that. But it's a huge problem, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to hear us all. We're very concerned. The speeders in our neighborhood are not our neighbors. Dr. Bonitatabas told us they're coming from, she didn't say speeders coming from, students coming from Simi, Camarillo, Oxnard, the Valley, all over. These are people coming into our neighborhood, and we feel that we're being disrespected by the way they're treating our neighborhood, and the trash is another problem. So anything you could do to help us will certainly be appreciated. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sergeant Clifton, would you care to address or comment?
Give me the location where it was at. I think we've gotten away from that, and that would be helpful to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Mr. Machiko, any comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners of the speaker? No? All right. Thank you very much. That concludes item 8D then. We move on to item 8E, which is the Bicycle Advisory Team recommendations. This is an information item as well. No vote will be taken. Mr. Machiko?
Okay, yes, I just wanted to give, or this information item is in the packet just as a status report on some of the things that took place over the last month. On a little write-up on the bicycle master plan, some activity that took place at the recent street fair. We received a bronze level award, or received a previous bronze level award. That's with a copy of the award in the report. We're also named one of the 50 best bike cities in Bicycling magazine, and also we received a small grant for $500 for the Los Robles trailhead improvements just last month. So with that, that concludes my comments, and no further action.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff from the commissioners? All right. We'll move on to item 9, the status report of prior Traffic Commission recommendations. The subject tonight will be Green Meadow Avenue speed cushions. Mr. Machiko?
Yes, just want to let the commission know that those speed cushions have been in the process of installation beginning yesterday. It sounds like they're a little bit more than halfway finished, so if you would like to take a look and see what the speed cushions look like, you can drive out there tomorrow. Hopefully they can finish up all the asphalt work tomorrow. So if you're in the area, take a look.
Thank
other than that, that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any questions of staff from the commissioners? Mr. Machiko, I had one question, and that is after we install speed cushions, there's a period of time before they're reevaluated as their effectiveness and to see if any unintended consequences were created. Is there a way to speed up the evaluation of this time, just because there was such a concern about traffic moving to other streets?
Yes, well, it just so happens that what we're going to do is, with the timing of the installation, it's just before the holiday period. So we're entering a time at which we normally don't do our traffic count. So we have the month of November, December, and probably early part of January, where we can let the neighborhood and residents get accustomed to the new devices. So probably in February, we'll remeasure the traffic levels throughout the neighborhood, speed and volume, and prepare a report, because that was one of the issues during the meeting, that citizens on neighboring streets were concerned with traffic diverting to their street. So we're going to perform a thorough neighborhood traffic volume study to see if there were any changes in traffic flow. So
Thank you, Mr. Mashiko, and thank you for doing that study on a timely basis. I know the residents will appreciate it. This brings us to item 10. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a question. We'll proceed to item 10, commission referrals from October 19th meeting, and there are none, which will go to item 11, work program and commission schedule. Are there any comments regarding this work program and commission schedule from the commissioners? Any questions for staff? We'll proceed to item 12. We're coming to that. Thank you, Commissioner Engler. We'll proceed to item 12, Traffic Commission comments and discussion. And this will be a voting item, and the subject is canceling the December 21st, 2016 meeting next month. Do we have any discussion from the commissioners? Commissioner Engler?
Well, actually, I have a question for staff about about action for future regarding our speakers. Have we passed that opportunity to ask is this the time where I ask if we're going to go forward with the citizens who spoke tonight?
Oh, okay, yeah, we're going to be working, or I think, as you heard Mr. Spurgeon said, we're going to have a informal community meeting somewhere, hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood in the Waverly Heights area, to talk about the traffic issues. And I think at that point, we'll probably summarize what happened at that meeting, and then bring an information item to the commission here in January to let you know what had transpired during that meeting.
Thank you. And then I'll launch right into what was asked of us, which is to move that we cancel our December meeting and meet again in January.
Thank you. Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a second? Or is there more discussion? Okay. Thank you. We'll take a hand vote. Ms. Zambrano?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or discussions? Commissioner Simpson?
So based off of what we've learned from the past with Waverly and the ESL students, the 800 ESL students right now are slated, according to the CVLC plan as it is today, to be transitioned to the Horizon Hills site. So in looking at those streets, they're also small and neighborhood, family neighborhood streets. And so I have a concern for those residents that if this plan does move forward as it's slated today, that we'll be sitting here with similar complaints, or 10 or 20 years from now with a similar history. So I would like to ask that we move forward with a traffic study of that neighborhood as to what the traffic patterns are today on Greta Street and Goldsmith and Drayton. And just whatever your expert opinion is about the main cross streets that would be impacted if we add that additional 800 ESL students to that facility on Greta Street, to make sure that we have the right information and that the district's also working off of solid data.
Okay, that's something that we can accommodate. We'll see how soon we can get the data in. I know next week is Thanksgiving, so perhaps we can get some machines out there tomorrow and at least get some of the data through maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. So I think the traffic patterns may not be affected till later part of the week. So,
because right now there is an adult parenting program at that site with a preschool included. So I'm assuming that they would be winding tomorrow, or Monday would be almost the holiday time, but just to put it on the list of things to do between now and the January meeting, I think would be great.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lemmel?
Mine is more a procedural question. That's not an item on tonight's agenda. nor does it sound like it has to be an action item. But I guess what I'm wondering is, are we doing two things? Are we putting the cart before the horse because we haven't been able to put it on the agenda to discuss it and find out about the neighborhood? And secondly, are we putting the cart before the horse as, wouldn't we have to react to, if not at least a neighbor, at least the school district making that decision? It's like we're blurring some lines, and we're tiptoeing along the Brown Act a little bit here. Do we have a procedure? Is my concern out of whack, or?
Well, this is something that, like, for example, this isn't necessarily an item that the commission would need to vote on for us to take action and have staff perform counts. This is something like, for example, if we received a call concern about the same issue, that, okay, there's a possibility that traffic patterns could be diverted or altered in that Horizon Hills neighborhood, it's something that we would just go ahead and perform as staff, knowing that, okay, we had a concern, we're going to study it, and then let this resident know, okay, what is our baseline traffic count level in that neighborhood. So,
I guess I'm just working off the assumption that the district's already communicated, because they've made that very clear in other meetings. So I just wanted to make sure that as a traffic commissioner that we have the information forthcoming that they might need.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yeah, one of the speakers, Brian Winnick, had mentioned a line of sight issue merging onto Las Flores from Montgomery. And I just want to make sure your notes captured that. I know you do, but you're going to be in the area, so you might want to observe. So that would be probably Montgomery North, making a left. I believe that was what he had stated, left on Flores, and there was a couple accidents caused by a line of sight. So you could check that out.
Okay, yes, we'll do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would like to support Commissioner Simpson's suggestion to gather data before the fact, so that if changes occur later, we'll have less guesswork to see exactly why the traffic conditions have changed. Are there any other? I have a few things that I'd like my fellow commissioners to consider for future discussions at meetings yet to be determined. I'll go over this real fast. On April 15, 2009, the City Council adopted the eligibility criteria, the rules, the regulations, and procedures for processing speed humps requests for the Traffic Commission. Section B, subparagraph 3 of this document stipulates that the lead petitioner shall demonstrate the completion of the city's neighborhood speed awareness program prior to submitting a petition. The training and equipment are provided at no charge by the city. My purpose of bringing this up is if we as commissioners want to direct staff to make City Council's recommendation to us be actually done before the petitioners address us as a commission. I think perhaps if this procedure was gone through, then there wouldn't be as many requests for speed humps that are not of a great urgency, more of a whim of the neighborhood. That's my opinion, but I'd like to see if we could discuss that at some point. I'd like to also open a discussion about the hazards of overgrown vegetation obstructing a motorist's view at permissive intersections, and perhaps we could come up with a recommendation to the City Council as far as how private citizens and private property could be directed to maintain their property so it's consistent with the safety of the motoring public. This I laugh at because the title of this is Distracted Driving. Is it always a bad idea? I had a recent conversation with Dr. Reddick, who posed this question to me. And last week on the 101 freeway, a semi overturned outside of Camarillo and spilled its load in all the northbound lanes of the 101. Well, I was in the southbound lane, and the southbound lane proceeded through the area at about 10 miles an hour for approximately 2 miles. The flashing lights of the emergency vehicles caused a distraction, and the unobstructed traffic also slowed. Now, the opposite is true for undistracted driving. In Texas, some interstates are forever straight and an unobstructed view in all directions, and there's no cross traffic, and consequently the speed limit is 80 miles an hour. Can we open a discussion in the future to noodle around ideas of how maybe we can slow traffic without the installation of speed cushions, primarily by causing distractions? In relation to Mr. Sweeting's discussion today of traffic management during the progression of emergency vehicles across our city, since everything's in place, perhaps we can open a conversation to see if our bus system couldn't take advantage of that. And it's not the same as an emergency vehicle by any means, so it would be a sub-use of the system. For instance, if a bus was approaching an intersection and the light normally would change when the bus was maybe 20, 30 yards from the intersection, that the light could stay green a little bit longer to allow the bus to proceed through the intersection and then make it stop on the other side of the intersection to have passengers board or on board. If this could happen, then in back of them is the red light, which would lessen the motorist, well, how would you say it? Lessen the motorist's anxiety, I guess, of pulling around a bus that's partially parked in the lane of travel. So perhaps we, with Mr. Sweeting, could see if the Opticon system can be expanded a little bit for our Transportation Commission. And then one last point, and this we don't really have to have a conversation in the near future, but our commission is titled Traffic and Transportation Commission. Mr. Hauser occasionally comes by and gives us updates of the transportation portion of our city, but we might consider to become more involved in the innovation of transportation ideas that we could use to make recommendations to City Council, especially in light that a major transportation plan is coming up, I think, in March. So in light of that, the commissioners can kind of noodle over those suggestions, and perhaps those can be items of discussion in the future. And that being said, and no more comments from the commissioners, I will adjourn our meeting tonight, and the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission will be adjourned until 6 p.m. on January 18th, 2017, in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. And I wish everyone a Happy New Year and everyone a good night. Thank you.